ready.
Okay.
응답하라
Yeochin.
여친. Go to the into the
Back
shit.
to the kyung to the Jew. Hey, Jane.
Yes.
Again. I mean, we do not coordinate our outfits, but I cannot help but be amused at our coordination.
Mhm.
Actually, I'm very like heavily printed today,
Uh-huh.
and you're sort of the more clean, like no print.
Mhm.
But the pant color, and
I'm
by the
picking
way,
up the background color.
I love your pants. They're Free People. What are they called? They're like
I don't know
hot
what
pants,
they're
but
called.
like
Yeah, kind of like
kind of
that.
like with lace, and
Yes.
it's just so
They're like balloon pants, kind
balloon
of.
pants.
Yeah.
It's so adorable. But the color, that it's like a very rare. It's not a color you often wear. I don't
No,
think.
I don't think I
It's
have.
almost like
Yeah.
a peachy,
Mhm.
soft, like
Peachy
nudish
pink.
color.
Yeah.
And then I have that on my backdrop,
Yes.
which is like, anyways.
So funny.
It's and we're
It's part
kind
of the
doing-
it's part of the fun of
Yeah.
showing up and
yeah. We get
yeah.
surprised, and I
Mhm.
like our dynamic. Like we
Mhm.
balance each other. You've gone like the simple, like clean aesthetic, and then I've got the whole lot of prints, which is loud, and it's like balancing us out. But anyways, I love seeing you here. It's a great way for us to unwind.
Mhm.
Jane, you're an LA girl. So there's the LA protests in full force right now.
Yes.
And
protests.
ICE raids,
Yes.
and then the protests to speak up against the ICE raids. First of all, I mean, California girl, let's start there. Like, where are your feelings as a Cali girl, like seeing the country just sort of get torn apart, but it's all sort of like exploding in
It's
California?
really it's very disconcerting
Yeah.
when we see the headlines and the videos. Like Ben and I will, show each other videos and we're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh." It's weird because we're removed from it,
Right.
but we still feel like it's happening to us.
Well, our producer Blake was just saying just this morning he saw ICE officers walking down the street.
Mm-hmm.
So
Here
not
in
as
Seattle,
full-blown, yeah.
downtown Seattle.
Yeah.
Well, they had protests and arrests at the protests just last night in Capitol Hill,
yeah.
here in Seattle.
Yeah.
So, but I think LA is
Right,
kind
is
of
the
where it's really heightened activity.
Yeah.
I think of the kimchi factory that my grandparents operated for
Yeah.
like almost 20 years in LA.
Yeah.
And they employed like all of their workers were they had to kind of navigate the immigration
Yeah.
issues, right? And they would work with my grandparents, and my mom would work with employees
Yeah.
and would try to protect them
Yeah.
and make sure that they kind of knew when there was potential for
A raid?
not a
Wow.
raid, but like I don't, you know what I mean? Like, but
inspection.
yeah, inspections. And I knew of that growing up.
Wow.
And how scary it could be.
Yeah.
But it is like very real.
Yeah.
And LA's a city that's
built
on the backs of
yeah.
a lot of
all
laborers,
the city
workers,
names
yes.
are like Hispanic rooted.
Mm-hmm,
You know, that's crazy that in that state where there's, like you said, it's built off of brown folks.
Mm-hmm.
So to have however, if this blows up to the level, I would love for Trump to be caught where because he's deploying troops, he's using National Guard, he's using all his forces. I would love to, if this ends up being the story where the immigrants rise up and fight him on his actions, and
Mm-hmm.
he gets pushed to a point where I feel like there is abuse of power that
Yeah.
is just gonna explode. If that becomes the end of his reign, that could be like the best case scenario. But I don't know. He's getting away with so much, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I don't know, at what point do we say, like, when did America become a dictatorship? It just so, it's the kind of thing, when I used to watch the news about other world leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember Philippines had this one leader that was like rounding up drug because there was a ex- excess of drug use in the streets or something. So he was rounding up people, and people would catch strays, and innocent people would just get put out.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, he would unalive them. Oh, the term unalive is such a carryover from TikTok, but
Yeah.
I mean, and I used to think that's so crazy, like
Mm-hmm.
rounding up people and locking them up. But
Mm-hmm.
that's what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And these are farmers, these are factory workers,
Mm-hmm.
these are not the evil killers and gang members. I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing videos of toddlers
Mm-hmm.
getting you know separated from their parents, pulled out of their arms. It's violent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I And then we have this whole weird social media sphere where there there is a need for, or a call out of people to talk about these issues. But like, I've always talked about these kind of issues. So for me, it's not like I'm someone that ever really got brand deals to begin with. But there is a sense of duty, but there's also like, well, a lot of people have this as their actual job. So there is almost like a line that you get called out on. You have to talk about this, but there are people who have their livelihoods, financial livelihoods at stake, or they're the sole provider. I've known so many people that have given up their regular jobs to actually go social media content creator full time. And a lot of these creators don't even talk about politics,
Mm-hmm.
but they get asked to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say you're probably on that spectrum. Like, you don't usually talk politics. You're a very family mom
Mm-hmm.
content. How do you deal with that? I guess for me, I've just always been shooting my mouth in the gutter. So I'm always like more in fear of getting banned from TikTok itself, which
Uh-huh.
I've already been banned once. So it's
Yeah.
like, what's another? But you're someone that's been able to like go through it,
Mm-hmm.
but you have like such a professional setting in a way.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the only way that I can stay sane
Yeah.
is to remember that it is so public. It's a very public space.
Yeah.
And several things can be true at one time
Always.
where it's like, yes, this is a platform and a privilege.
Right.
And so there is a sense of duty,
Yeah.
but also for me personally and for a lot of influencers, it is a forum of work where
Yeah.
you show up as a professional.
Yeah.
So I do still think of it as a place where I can, you know, vocalize
Yeah.
my beliefs and speak out, but I have to weigh a lot more of the complexities
Yeah.
than I did back in 2020 and 2021.
And you have almost like I think sometimes like legal obligation because you're under
I have
contract at times. Yeah.
yes, I have legal obligations.
Yeah.
During the presidential election, our agency reminded us about like political posts, and like I took it with a grain of salt. I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
why,
Right.
but it also I also did research on, okay, if do I want to work with this company? Let me see who they're aligned with. And I
Yes,
said
you're
no
very
to
good about
some
that.
things,
Yes.
right?
You're
Um,
very selective
I was very
because you get a lot.
selective. Yes.
But you're very selective to
Mm-hmm.
read up on the companies, and who do you support. So
Mm-hmm.
I really admire that about you.
Um,
You don't
but
accept everything that comes your
Right.
way. Yeah.
But I feel like it's tough because in this day and age, social media is the first place people go to not only see what's happening, but to see how they should feel about something.
That's true.
And so I really do think it's so vital for people not to be just spectators scrolling on their phone.
Or just listening to their favorite
Uh
creators,
huh.
right?
Uh
You
huh.
have to go and get
But be
involved.
involved
Yeah.
in the
Get
community.
educated.
Work
Be
with
up to date.
local organizations,
Yes.
see what you can do.
Yeah.
Go to your like I went to our school
Yeah.
and talked to the counselor and gave him my friend had given me cards that it was like one side English, one side Spanish of
Yeah.
like know your rights type of thing, something that you could keep in your back pocket
Yeah.
um, should anybody be approached. And we have a lot of non-English speaking families at our school.
Yeah.
And so talking to the counselor and seeing like, okay, what is the vibe? What's going on? What's going
Yeah.
on in my community? Those kinds of things I think are more important. And
Yeah.
not that people, I don't know, I think where I get caught up is everything is so performative.
It's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's like one side of the exhaustion comes from this being bombarded with bad news, bad news, bad news. I was on my news app the other day and I'm
Yeah.
like, my God, I could scroll and at any point take a screenshot and all the news is horrible.
Yeah.
And then
It's a
the other
real.
part of the exhaustion is uh, the energy that it takes to put out there,
Yeah.
right? To signal to people like, hey, I'm aware, I'm engaged. I want you to see that I'm like talking about it, posting about it.
Yeah.
To
There's a
me,
certain element. Yeah.
like I don't like why
Why
do
do you
I
have to
care?
justify?
I don't care about that. Like
Right.
I have had to shed that. I would have to
Yeah.
shed that because I used to have like a lot of anxiety about like what do I say? What do I say? What do I
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's not about what do I say? Okay,
What do I
what do I do?
do? And
What
what?
conversations am I
Yes.
having
Yeah.
with
Your
my kids?
children. And what are
Mhm.
you doing in your local community?
Yes.
And then it's like, why do I have to advertise
Right.
that
And
for
that
you
is
to
not going to
believe
be
that I
broadcast.
care?
It really is not going to be broadcast. And if you feel like it is, and that's something that's wrong with our
Yeah. A
society.
lot of it is like if you do or don't, you're damned either
Damned if
way.
you do, damned
Yeah,
if you don't.
exactly.
And I want to talk about how complex this issue is, the immigration and ICE issue is for Asian Americans, because Asian Americans have been called out for being silent or mum. And I highly suspect that it's not because they are looking the other way.
Yeah. So I actually made a video about a guy who made a video. He would. It's one thing. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of torn because there are people that are saying when you're silent, it speaks volumes, and how dare you be silent, right? Well,
Mm.
this guy spoke up, and I wish he had stayed silent because a Korean American man, and he's talking about, you know what? I'm gonna take one. His words.
Mm.
I'm gonna take one for the team, and I'll just say it. If you are an Asian American whose parents came to this country and did things legally, he kept emphasizing the word legally, and did their paperwork and spent their whole lives to become legal citizens,
Mhm.
you should be ashamed of yourself
Mhm.
for speaking up for against ICE and speaking up against what basically what Trump is doing. And honestly, at first I was mad, but I do think this is the sentiment that a lot of Asian Americans that are intentionally staying silent, we do have in our community, which is we in our own, no matter how much we call it out, the model minority is a myth. I think a lot of Asian Americans have embodied that, like that somehow we're the immigrants that did it right. that we were legal about our paperwork, that we were hardworking, and that like they bought into this lie that we're better than Black and brown folks that don't work as hard as us. And I know, and I say that because my own parents kind of puppeted those talking points.
Yeah.
And it's like, look around you. Who is working the jobs that you would not want to do?
Right.
You know, that are working around the clock for below minimum wage. That is not, if you see Black and brown folks doing those jobs, how can you then say that they're not working hard enough? Those are the hardest jobs. Yeah. Physical, it takes such physical toll on your body. And yeah, so I made a video in response to that. I think it's very shameful as someone that has gone through the immigration process. I came when I was 8. I had to wait. I didn't get my citizenship until I became an adult for myself. My parents could have easily filled out a paper that would have automatically made me a citizen because they got their citizenship when I was a minor. But they didn't understand the paperwork. One, they were and they were tired. They just did not, and they ran out of money for after they did it for themselves. So I ended up getting it for myself. I think in my early 20s. Funny enough, I got it because I feared the Bush administration, which just seems it pales in comparison. But I was like, I should get my citizenship because that man is kind of scary. And now I'm like, this is. He was Casper the Ghost compared to what we got going on right now. But yeah, I think it was very disappointing. It's one thing to hear that from a boomer, but to hear that from a young Asian American person who like daily makes content on, you know, happenings on the daily, who is should be well informed.
So he was saying like we shouldn't speak out against ICE.
That shame on you, and you're bringing shame to your parents.
I mean, that's like a very, very short-sighted generalization.
Yeah, and also, but it's like yes, but also, don't you think that exists in our community? Like your parents worked so hard. Your parents did everything the legal way. Like these other people didn't, and that's why they're paying the consequences. Don't you think that there is a perpetuation of that belief?
Yes, but I mean, to your point, it's jarring when it's coming from a young person.
I expect that from like
boomers. We don't expect because our parents to
I've
understand.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a very common thing to hear our parents, a generation, to say. They had to check all the boxes and make sure they had all their paperwork, and but
it does seem to seep in to young minds that have really gotten indoctrinated in their homes.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
That's white supremacy at work.
I know.
Because that's how this system was set up to differentiate different groups
and make you feel like you're doing better than the other folks and you're getting an A+.
What you need to realize is that just because you're protected under the system that exists right now is no guarantee that it's going to stay that way with this administration, but with any administration whose goal is to just uphold white supremacy.
Yeah.
And I heard, and I'm hearing more and more stories about this, but people of our parents' generation who are getting flagged when they're simply trying to renew their driver's license online, right? And if you're a naturalized citizen.
Right. So it's happening to us as well.
It is happening. It is happening to Asian Americans. Did you hear about the
Columbia student who is a legal resident that's been living here in this country since 7 years old, and she just simply attended a protest, not Palestinian, like I think it was like informational almost.
Yeah.
And just for attending, she got flagged.
I did hear about
that. And they wanted to deport her.
I did hear about
this
that.
This is happening also to we are not shielded. We're closer to brown folks, and nobody's going to mistake us for
No
white
one.
people,
No one. I mean,
although they
you
want
may
to.
be like white adjacent,
Yeah,
right? Moving in like wealthy white
right.
spaces. But when it comes down to it,
Yeah,
we will never have that kind of just face value privilege
right.
of being protected.
Yeah. I mean, and they do employ like remember when in Washington they were trying to erase the Asian student population
Uh-huh.
by saying like, well, you can just pull them with the white kids. And it's like, what? Like they
Mhm.
use measures to make you
Mhm.
believe you're one of
Mhm.
us. But
Right.
you know that
Right.
the Asian
I'm thinking
community,
about like, affirmative action
yeah,
at universities, and I was always so confused
yeah,
why so many Asian Americans are against
right?
affirmative action, right?
I
And like
know, and
in my
that's,
mom's generation, when my mom went to college, that worked in her favor.
yeah. Isn't that it?
By the time I was going to college, it's like, "Oh no, you don't want that
Yeah,
because, it doesn't put you at any kind of advantage."
it's I I I don't know. It's complicated.
It is very complicated. I think it is meant to be divisive,
It is.
and I think we need to um yes, we need to mobilize and organize and continue to speak out,
Yeah.
but I think we have to realize that um
We have to do it in an effective way.
in an effective way. Yes.
Just because you want your favorite creators to talk about certain things doesn't mean that they're equipped to talk about
Right. I
all the
mean, social
things.
media is such a place where everybody thinks they can you know, uh pretend to be an expert.
Yeah. Well, and this
Or
guy,
yeah.
people go to this particular
Mhm.
guy. He's the guy that does like crazy news coming out of Korea right
Oh,
now.
so
So he has kind
sensational.
of
Yeah.
like, yeah, made himself sort of like a, people fall for these people
Mhm.
as like they're some kind of journalists, but they're
Sure.
not. They're just
Yeah.
like just any other guy
Mhm.
mouthing off with a
Yeah.
microphone. And look at him, his talking points. I'm like,
Mhm.
I wish he had just shut the fuck up. So that's the flip side. you
Yeah.
you want everybody to speak up.
Mhm.
Well, he did,
Yeah.
and he is horribly misrepresenting the Asian
Yeah.
American community. So in that particular case, I would have much preferred if he had just said nothing. but
Yeah.
but then again, I guess some people also feel like they want to know who they're following,
Mhm.
and they want to make sure that they align with the values of people who influence them, which in itself is, I hated the term influencer.
That is absolutely fine,
Yeah,
but I'm not going to pretend that everybody who's on social media has a value system that aligns with me.
exactly. Okay, so
So, like I
that's the
don't
other thing. It's like life, like you said, the very point that you made when we were starting this is like so many things can be true at once. And
Mhm.
that is the fact of life. So many things are constantly true at once, just because life is not black and white. I always talk about everything is in the grays.
Mhm.
You have to allow for nuance. You have to allow to be engaged. You have to allow to be able to talk about different things. Everything, everywhere, all at once
Yeah.
is the state of our
Yeah. Yeah.
existence. So to put people in a box is a
Mhm.
very dangerous thing to do in any shape or form.
Yeah.
But, the other thing I wanted to really talk about is the fact that a lot of people think undocumented immigrants automatically means illegal. And that
Mhm.
is not the case.
Mhm.
If you are undocumented, and I think the average person really does believe when they hear the word undocumented, it is
Mhm.
synonymous with illegal, and it's not the case.
Mhm.
By law, an undocumented person is not breaking any laws. That is
Mhm.
a fact. And this is the kind of education I think we can all do a better of understanding. Because I myself, for the longest time, did think that
Uh-huh.
until I got educated. And I was like, wow. And undocumented immigrants have rights in their home and in their workplace, and they pay taxes.
Mhm.
And in fact, a statistic I read, undocumented immigrants pay $80,000 more per capita in terms of what they get out of the government for how much taxes they put in.
Mhm.
And they are one of the largest sources of funding Social Security. The Social Security is like a billions system, and undocumented immigrants are one of the largest sources funding into it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if you get rid of all the undocumented immigrants in this country, we will face a huge financial blowout.
Absolutely.
And that's like
With the tariffs too, right? It's like, oh my God, like
right.
there's
And put on the tariffs on top of that. We are, and I think it's unfortunate because Trump's talking points have really vilified the
Mhm.
most vulnerable population.
Mhm.
Everybody, and he does this intentionally. He
Mhm.
uses the words evil,
Mhm.
gangs, killers, murderers, and then it's like when you mix in undocumented, and
Mhm.
people have we have like short bandwidth
Yeah.
and short attention spans,
Mhm.
so it's easy to gravitate towards jump words, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
attach more meaning into it. And
Mhm.
he's God, I will give him credit for one thing. He's able to make not a good impact, but an impact.
Mhm.
He has single-handedly driven this country into such a extreme state.
Yeah. Yeah.
With Democrats, always the criticism is that they don't do enough.
Mhm.
This man has just gutted everything
Mhm.
so single-handedly. It is, I mean, white man power
Yeah.
is whiting. It's not funny. It's not funny, but what else can we do and feel? However, I will say, as exhausting as, every time there's an issue,
Mhm.
everybody wants everybody to speak up on it and whatnot. And then there's a whole social media circus that happens. However, I did see a video this morning of Newsom talking
Mhm.
about how keep talking about it. We are putting pressure. We are
Mhm.
exposing the Trump administration. The dialogue is challenging
Mhm.
his presidency. So I found a little comfort in that.
Mhm.
Um, However, I also see a lot of posts about Newsom being like one of the most evil man. but then it was like really confusing because somebody was like, he is an evil man. I can
Mhm.
just see it in his soul, but he's using his evil for good. And I was
I
like,
know.
so like, I don't know how to feel about that. How do you feel about that as a Cali rooted
Yeah,
girl?
I mean, gosh. We have to stay engaged and keep voting.
Yeah. I
We
mean,
can't say like, "Oh, I stay out of politics. I don't
you
really
hear
mind
that
that
so
stuff."
much.
So
That is
much.
very alarming to hear.
Yeah. And
And
it's like you have blinders on and you are able to it's a privilege
right,
to be able to say like I just stay out of politics and put my head down.
crazy. And if you think about it, immigrant folks have put their heads down and worked.
Mhm.
They don't have the privilege to
Well, they've all also always had the mindset like we are guests here.
yeah,
I don't want to like make an overgeneralization, but it's a very common immigrant sentiment
yeah. And
is
also
that
they feel like they don't have rights to
right.
the election, and
Mhm.
they don't have the privilege of
Mhm.
getting involved with politics.
Uh-huh.
But you know my parents also taught me when I was little, like, stay out of white people's way. Just do the work
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
make yourself small, and then there won't be
Mm.
any problems.
Mm.
And that mentality, I think,
Mhm.
is sort of the immigrant mentality.
Mhm.
But now it's like we're at a place where you have to get involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's uh, I just am horrified at seeing the imagery, like what you saw. I mean, of course it's nowhere comparable, but like, you know, when you were seeing the stuff that was happening in Gaza,
Mm-hmm.
kids being pried away from you know, parents that are hurt and all that stuff. Now we have our own fiasco and our chaos in
Yeah.
our country of children being ripped out of their parents' arms.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a audio that people are using where this child is yelling in Spanish, like, my mother, please, my mother, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a as an immigrant that came when I was 8 years old, it just makes me so unnerved. And you know, a lot of people, though I hate the people that are, well, hate is a strong word, but the people that are like, well, why don't they just do things legally? That is a like a
Um,
that is a dog whistle term, right?
right.
Legally,
Right.
you should have done
Right.
it legally. It
Mm-hmm.
is a grueling process. I was
Mm-hmm.
left in Korea because my parents became took them years to get their
Yeah.
own status right enough to then petition for me, and
Right.
I'm their direct child.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a grueling process that takes money.
Education.
Yeah.
Um, you know, coming here when you're like how desperate you are
Yeah.
when you're making the move,
Yeah.
right? The resources that you have.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. I don't know where, if this continues on. Like, what's Trump's plan? Like, to just remove all the brown folks in our country? Like, where's the end game?
right. It's scary to think about.
And the crazy thing is, our country's biggest like factors in you know, that we worry about: school shootings, police brutality.
Mm-hmm.
Those sectors probably have more deaths and violence
Mm-hmm.
than anything that goes on in the immigrants working on farms or factories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, but he has painted this picture that we are under siege
Mm-hmm.
by brown people taking over the jobs, and that's why you're poor. And it's like, these are jobs that no white person ever wants to do. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry. Yeah, I never see white people working in the farms and factories. What are you talking about? Like, these are not jobs that they're willing to do. I don't know. I don't know where, after all this, what are we going to be left with?
Yeah. I mean, it's always, I don't know. As long as these systems are in place, it's always going to be a capitalistic kind of system, right? The people at the top will always benefit. What's scary to think about, and I think what a lot of Asian Americans need to think about, is capitalism always has to work with, the people who have more
Yeah.
and the people who, on whose backs
Yeah.
that's happening.
Yeah.
And it might not be us right now that's like being the biggest target.
But we will certainly be the next on the chopping block.
I mean, it's a very sobering thought.
Yeah.
Is yeah, and this like divisiveness is intentional.
Yeah.
And we have to wake up to that, I think.
I think what infuriates me most is for those that have had the immigrant experience to not find empathy or more relative factors to other immigrants? Like,
Yeah,
how do
I
you
mean,
align yourself with
the system is set up so that
you're made
if
to
you made
believe?
it, if
Yeah,
you made it, you're made to believe that it was all by your own effort.
right. That
And
is the
everybody by nature of being here in America has the same set of tools and resources,
mm,
which is just not true.
right. The great illusion
Yeah, yeah.
of the American dream.
It is an illusion. Um,
Oh, I saw a video that wrecked me.
yeah.
It was a Hispanic father and son.
Uh,
It was a UW graduation,
mm.
and his son was all dressed up.
Just this year.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
just saw it, and I was like, "Oh my god!" It was in front of the UW,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I went.
Yeah.
I think it was in front of like one of the. It's not Odegaard. What's the other one? Well, anyway, one of the buildings, and his son is in the UW.
Mm-hmm.
Very proud moment, and the dad is teared up. President Trump, look at us, like we're here. This is from bottom to top.
Mm-hmm.
The hardworking dad, and
Mm-hmm.
he's so proud of his son,
Mm-hmm.
and his son starts crying,
Mm-hmm.
and it just, you know, that's our story.
Mm-hmm.
I see myself
Mm-hmm.
in that family,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's heartbreaking that there are Asian Americans that don't recognize that we have that same story.
Yeah.
Whew, but importantly, get involved locally. I think people really forget how important it is to, it's easy to raise your hands up and say Trump took over everything, Elon Musk took over everything, but you locally is where it starts,
Mm-hmm.
and people getting involved and being active in their own community is the best way to combat what you see out there happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should.
Yeah. I mean, it's a place to start. If
Yeah.
you're feeling like there's nothing you can do, there is. Like, instead of doom scrolling, a much better thing to do is to just go out there, go outside of your house,
Yeah.
find organizations.
Have you seen that show, Our Unwritten Soul?
I'm watching it right now.
There's a
The
line
Korean
in there.
drama.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday is over.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow is
coming.
Today is unknown.
Uh-huh.
So do with today
Mm-hmm.
what you can.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
We'll end with that. Meow.